Ryan Reynolds in big trouble with his statement. Today is the day Blake Lively is going to be deposed. So this is amazing evidence. She's contradicting herself when she said that Baldoni was a danger and he needs to be
The words left her mouth and the entire Hollywood PR machine instantly caught fire. Blake Lively admitted to a New York Times journalist that the situation with Justin Baldoni wasn't even the worst experience she had endured in the industry. This single sentence ripped through her carefully constructed public narrative, leaving her powerful husband Ryan Reynolds standing in the middle of a collapsing defense. The golden couple's victim story didn't just crack, it shattered into a million pieces. People are calling it an earthquake under their polished facade, revealing a hidden agenda that is far more chilling than anyone initially imagined. The truth about Hollywood's favorite couple just went nuclear.
Wasn't that bad and she never wanted to go public with it. What made her go public with it? Well, she's saying that it was because of the smear campaign.
Ryan Reynolds has always been the charming jokester hero, but he's now in deep trouble after branding Baldoni a predator in front of the entire world. This sweeping accusation was meant to protect his wife, but it's boomeranging with enough force to end careers. It wasn't just a careless comment from a protective husband, it was an undeniable contradiction to what Blake was saying behind closed doors. Why would Ryan push such a dramatic exaggeration if the truth was far less severe? The public is starting to realize that what was truly at stake wasn't just a reputation, but something much darker. This wasn't about safety, it was about a calculated smear aimed at total destruction.
It was much worse than the actually alleged SH. Well, Megan Thuy was saying that
the interview with New York Times journalist Megan Thuy blew the entire story wide open when it resurfaced in late 2024. Thuy disclosed that Blake had privately confessed that the alleged incident with Baldoni was relatively minor compared to other experiences in her career. This bombshell directly undermined the urgency and the severity of Blake's public and legal stance. If this wasn't the worst thing she had endured, why was she singling out Justin Baldoni with such terrifying intensity? The glaring inconsistency made her legal fight appear less like a search for genuine justice and more like a strategic targeting of a man who didn't fit into her Hollywood vision.
This wasn't really bad. And that put Ryan Reynolds in big trouble with his statement. Some
insiders are now revealing that this wasn't just a reaction to a bad workplace experience. It was a calculated effort to destroy Baldoni's credibility before any legal facts could emerge. Expert psychologists like Dr. Ramani have pointed out how these tactics perfectly align with traditional character attack strategies. It wasn't about seeking healing or workplace safety. It was about weaponizing public perception to crush a colleague. By twisting Baldoni's own admissions of personal growth into damning evidence of guilt, the narrative was manipulated from the start. This was a masterclass in narrative control, but the strings are finally starting to show to the general public.
It was freedom of speech, and he believed him to be a predator. Okay, how could he have believed that he was a predator when Blake Lively was saying...
The contradictions only deepened when details of a secret 17-point contract surfaced. According to those close to the production, Blake established her own conditions and demanded specific behavioral adjustments that Baldoni actually complied with. This quiet agreement, made months before any lawsuit was filed, shows a version of Blake Lively who was in full control of the situation. She wasn't a helpless victim in a hostile environment. She was a powerful producer dictating the rules of engagement. This contract wasn't a casual workplace agreement. It was signed under immense pressure, with Blake holding all the cards, making her later claims of fear seem totally disconnected.
Acted with reckless disregard of the truth. He intentionally exaggerated Blake Lively's experience because, of course, he knew that Justin Baldoni...
Sources now confirm that this 17-point behavior contract was essentially a form of professional pressure disguised as workplace protection. If Baldoni had resisted these demands, the entire project could have collapsed, and his career would have been ruined before the movie even hit theaters. This manipulative tactic was designed to force compliance, and it completely dismantles the credibility of the victim's story she presented to the world. It was a calculated move, plain and simple, executed with a reckless disregard for the truth. When you hold all the power, the narrative of being powerless starts to look like a very convenient piece of fiction for the cameras.
Amazing evidence. It's so interesting to me how this came up after the case was
Ryan Reynolds' role in this has shifted from a protective husband to someone accused of acting with dangerous disregard for reality. He intentionally echoed his wife's experience in the most extreme terms possible, knowing the weight his name carries in the industry. But how could he brand someone a predator when his own wife was privately downplaying the severity of the incident to a high-profile journalist? This stunning inconsistency wasn't just confusing, it exposed a messy and highly calculated game. His public declarations didn't end the scandal. They only unleashed deeper suspicions about what the couple was trying to hide from the public eye.
Blake Lively said that she had experienced much worse in Hollywood than what actually happened.
The fallout from these claims didn't stop at social media rumors. It moved into the highest offices of Hollywood power. At the July 2024 Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, Reynolds reportedly pulled strings that changed the course of a man's career forever. He didn't just whisper in a corner. He allegedly approached executives at WME, which was Baldoni's own management company. By labeling him a predator to his own representatives, Reynolds struck a calculated blow at Baldoni's professional future. He leveraged his massive star power to ensure there was no way back for his wife's co-star. This was a ruthless use of influence that moved the situation from a dispute into a blacklisting.
What was came after the smear campaign that she thinks that I was a part of, and a lot of people, all of you creators out there, were part of this smear campaign against her. And of course,
the repercussions of that premiere were swift and devastating for Justin Baldoni. WME abruptly severed ties with him immediately after Reynolds made those back-channel accusations. Baldoni himself later cited Reynolds' behind-the-scenes pressure as the direct cause of his dismissal from the agency. This wasn't about ensuring workplace safety on a movie set that had already finished filming. It was about cutting a man off from his livelihood and future opportunities. It's a true scandal of power being misused at the highest levels, with real financial and professional consequences for someone who hadn't even been charged with a crime.
I think if she would withdraw her case today, she would look like a coward and a
Ari Emanuel, the former CEO of WME and one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, didn't even deny that Reynolds had a massive influence on the decision. In a leaked conversation, Emanuel openly acknowledged his deep loyalty to the Reynolds and Lively brand. He described the situation as an unfortunate spot for Baldoni, but defended the decision to fire him based on his long-standing trust in the golden couple. In the inner circles of Hollywood, it seems that trust and personal friendships far outweigh evidence or fairness. This confirmed that the dismissal wasn't based on facts, but on a personal vendetta fueled by the industry's most influential pair.
To sign this agreement of 17 points, that was 30 points, of that he should not stop behaving like the way he did, and blah, blah, blah. She said that Baldoni's behavior improved with these new.
The defense offered by industry power brokers only exposed more cracks in the couple's spotless image. Firing someone not because they did something wrong, but because your famous friends don't like them, is the definition of a toxic industry culture. This confirmation proved that Ryan's reckless claims didn't just generate internet rumors. They caused a man to lose his representation and his access to key career opportunities. The smear campaign was working exactly as intended, but as the details of the WME firing leaked out, the public's perception began to shift from sympathy for Blake to genuine concern about the couple's power.
He approached Justin Baldoni and said that he'd need to stop behaving this way. He did stop behaving the way that she was accusing him of behaving, which we now know that he didn't really do, and he only signed these points.
Adding to the chaos was Blake's publicist, Leslie Sloan, who took the legal battle to an even more aggressive level. Sloan demanded a staggering $1.3 million in legal fees even after her portion of the lawsuit was dismissed. However, leaked text messages between a journalist and Baldoni's team revealed that Sloan admitted she wasn't even aware of certain incidents until they hit the press. This directly contradicted her aggressive legal stance and made the million-dollar demand look like a desperate grab for profit. It suggested that even the people paid to protect Blake's image were flying blind and reacting to headlines rather than facts.
Came out and called Justin Baldoni a predator. He put the
The public's patience began to wear thin when another scandal erupted, offering a brutal contrast to Blake's claims. The Kevin Costner Horizon scandal featured a stunt performer named Devin Labella, who presented undeniable proof of a violent assault. She had the receipts, the timestamped text messages, and communications with an intimacy coordinator. This mountain of concrete evidence made Blake's narrative, which was built on vague and shifting after-the-fact claims, look incredibly fragile. While one case had real-time records, the other seemed to rely entirely on the power of a PR machine. It was a wake-up call for the audience who realized that words are nothing without proof.
Out in public, and he admitted that he had called him that in his motion to dismiss against Blake.
Media outlets and legal experts quickly noticed a gaping hole in Blake's case that couldn't be ignored. Despite months of international attention, court filings, and public statements, Blake failed to produce a single text message or email supporting her allegations. There were no private messages to Ryan complaining about the behavior, and no emails to staff during production. The Costner case proved what real evidence looks like, and in comparison, Blake's legal battle appeared increasingly hollow. When the only evidence is a story told months after the fact, people start to wonder if the story was written by a PR team rather than lived by a victim.
This statement is what made WME his management company.
Even more damaging were the texts that did eventually surface, which painted a completely different picture of the relationship on set. These messages showed flirty banter and suggestive jokes between Blake and Baldoni, directly contradicting her later claims of discomfort and misconduct. This devastating evidence undermined her entire image and forced the public to ask deeper questions about the integrity of her allegations. If she was truly uncomfortable, why was she engaging in such friendly and light-hearted exchanges? It suggested that the victim narrative was something created during the editing room phase of the movie, not during the actual filming.
24 at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, that Ryan Reynolds had allegedly approached WME and expressed his deep disdain for Baldoni, suggesting the agency was working with a
Hollywood insiders began whispering that the entire legal battle was a meticulously choreographed performance. From the polished interviews in high-fashion magazines to the strategically timed leaks, everything appeared designed for damage control rather than justice. This wasn't an organic struggle for a woman trying to find her voice. It was a corporate strategy to preserve a brand that is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The alliance with powerful media outlets and the reliance on scripted narratives suggested that the truth was secondary to perception. But as more contradictions emerged, the performance started to fall apart on the world stage.
Mario Emanuel, who used to be the CEO of that management company, came out in a podcast where someone forgot to press rec on this podcast, but his quotes were leaked, so we know that.
The backlash intensified as the public realized they might have been manipulated by a couple they once adored. Blake found herself trapped in a fight built on shifting sands and missing proof, and her credibility took hit after hit. The untouchable facade of the perfect Hollywood couple was no longer just cracking, it was shattering under the weight of its own inconsistencies. Every time a new interview surfaced, it seemed to contradict a previous legal filing. This wasn't just a PR nightmare. It was a total collapse of trust between the stars and the audience who had supported them for decades.
Said that he always trusted Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and he was basically...
Dr. Ramani's analysis of the situation suggests that Blake's actions follow a very specific pattern of narrative control. This involves highlighting personal vulnerabilities to gain sympathy, then isolating a target to frame them as the villain. When the backlash starts, the strategy shifts to reframing every past event as a moment of victimhood. This high-level psychological maneuvering raised massive questions about how media influence is used to manage reputations in the modern era. It wasn't just about one movie. It was about how the most powerful people in the world can reshape reality to suit their own needs and protect their status.
Would never have fired Justin Baldoni if it wasn't for Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. Meaning that he has actually caused damage to Justin Baldoni.
The role of Ryan Reynolds in this saga has fundamentally changed how he is viewed by the industry. He shifted from being Hollywood's most lovable jokester to a figure perceived as willing to use his massive influence in aggressive and potentially harmful ways. His reported involvement with WME and the firing of Baldoni fueled a massive debate about industry power dynamics. Critics argue that this wasn't just about a husband defending his wife, but about a mogul leveraging his status to end the career of a rival. It raises broader questions about the pressures within the Hollywood machine and what happens when you cross the golden couple.
Situation, as you know. So then Megan Twohey continues there to say, yeah, I think that by her account, this was a situation of problem identified, problem solved.
The two versions of Blake Lively that emerged during this scandal could not coexist without intense scrutiny. On one hand, you had the powerful producer manipulating set dynamics with complex legal contracts and 17-point agreements. On the other hand, you had the woman crying on magazine covers about being a victim. Megan Twohey's inadvertent slip about the NYT interview finally forced those two versions into a head-on collision. It became undeniable that this wasn't about healing or workplace progress. It was about control, narrative management, and the ruthless preservation of a crafted image that was starting to fade. Despite the fact that major claims against Baldoni were being dismissed and the public was turning against her, Blake actually intensified her legal efforts. Rather than withdrawing quietly as the depositions loomed, she doubled down on her stance. This stubbornness proved to be incredibly costly, both financially and in terms of her reputation. Baldoni, instead of trying to fix the relationship, decided to drop everything and focus solely on defending himself against what his team called a relentless smear campaign. This shift highlighted the intense pressure and the desperate measures being taken by both sides as the situation spiraled out of control. The fall of the Reynolds and Lively empire is a cautionary tale for the ages. Their brand, once considered the gold standard of celebrity couples, was built on a foundation of perfect PR and curated moments. But that empire is now collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions, revealed by their own words and actions. This meltdown wasn't started by external critics or jealous rivals. It was a ticking time bomb within their own meticulously managed machine. As their influence continues to unravel, the rest of Hollywood is watching in silence, realizing that even the most glittering facades can eventually shatter. Ultimately, this story is about the trail of damaged lives and manipulated truths left behind in the pursuit of power. The reality of what happened on that set may never be fully known, but the way it was handled has exposed the dark underbelly of celebrity influence. When the smoke clears, the golden couple will have to face the fact that the public no longer sees them as the charming heroes they once were. They are now viewed as a cautionary example of what happens when narrative control becomes more important than the truth. In the end, even the most powerful people in Hollywood can't rewrite a story once the receipts start coming out.